He was a morbidly obese surgeon destined for an operating table and an early death. Now he's a rebel MD who is fabulously fit and fighting to make America healthy again. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia.
Hey folks, welcome to Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia. We've got a guest today that I actually asked Phil to invite to the show. I found her online and I think she's got a really cool story, and B, brings yet another angle on what it means to be metabolically healthy to the table. Our guest is Alli Covington. Welcome, Alli.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited.
Phil, what'd you think when I said, hey, we should invite her?
At this point, perhaps foolishly, I have full trust in you, Jack. And when you recommend someone for the show, I'm usually on board. But no, I got a chance to check out some of Alli's background and work as well. And really
Thank you.
excited to have this conversation. I think, like you said, her story is going to resonate with our audience, and some of the angles that she brings to this health journey will be quite informative as well. Maybe
Thanks.
why don't we start with your story, Alli? Why don't you tell us how you became interested in health and fitness
Mm.
and what your journey has kind of been like?
Thanks. Okay, so going back to my childhood, in the 80s, everybody was skinny, right? All the kids were skinny, and it was all about being skinny. And I wasn't. A little bit of a chunky kid, and that stung a little bit, got bullied a little bit there. And so I got into dance and exercise and all of that via my mom, and she pushed me into it. And she was always following the next greatest fad diet out there. She was always trying to find the way to be thin and skinny like everybody was supposed to be at that point. And along the way, though, I got into fitness at the end of high school, started weight training and really taking it very seriously when I stopped being in competitive dance, and carried that on into college. Became a personal trainer my freshman year. I was a bio undergrad. I was going to go to medical school, and but mostly because I wanted to deliver babies. So I did not want to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. But along the way, I noticed my dad followed every doctor's piece of advice that they gave him. And in his 30s, he had GERD. Not long after that, he had high cholesterol. He was put on statins, and then high blood pressure. And then he had a double bypass at 50. And after that, he had type 2 diabetes, and then gout, and then so on. And he died. We're far too young, as far as I'm concerned. And so that's one of the big reasons why I'm so passionate about helping people overcome all of this metabolic disorder that seems to be very pervasive in our society, because I don't want everybody else's dad to kind of go the way mine did. And he had all the signs and symptoms that we now call metabolic disorder that we didn't 30 years ago when I started in health and fitness.
Yeah,
That sounds,
unfortunately, a story that I am way too familiar with, and see every day as I
I
operate
bet.
on people like your dad. And
Yeah.
what's even more kind of upsetting and frustrating about what you just told is, we did know about metabolic syndrome back then, and we've
Mhm.
known about it, and it just doesn't get talked about enough. And of course, that's the mission we're on, to change that.
Yeah.
And that does really resonate well. Yeah, I guess maybe talk a little bit more, about what that did turn into for you, and how you kind of started to incorporate this, and then what got you, I guess, interested in, teaching others about it and figuring out ways to do that.
Okay. So right after I got certified as a personal trainer and I was, in my bio undergrad, and you as a biology undergrad, you're not just going through bio 101 and learning the cursory overview. You're in biochemistry. You're learning the Krebs cycle and the fatty acid oxidation cycle. And at the same time, I'm also training for a Miss Fitness competition. And so I was very particularly interested in how do our cells burn fat? How do we utilize energy to our greatest potential? And how do we use that to get lean? And this is not really taught in the personal training certifications. Nutrition really wasn't a big piece of that. And they certainly didn't get into this aspect of it. At the same time, while I'm training people in the club and I've graduated with my bachelor's, I decided to go and get a master's in counseling psychology. And I distinctly remember one of my clients who is a real estate broker. And he said, "Uh-oh, wow, now instead of going to law school, you're going into counseling psychology. Oh, I'm not going to be able to tell you anything anymore, am I?" And I said, "That's a really interesting response. What made you feel that way?" And then he started spilling his guts about why he felt like therapy was useless or didn't want to divulge his innermost feelings. And I'm thinking, and you're doing it right now. And what I realized while I was getting my master's is that our bodies will do whatever our minds tell it to do. It's the minds we have to convince. And so that's why I started dovetailing the mental health aspect into the physical fitness aspect, because I started watching how people's complete outlook on life, their business would change, their relationships would change as their own self identity changed as they got healthier. And then fast forward to today, where now I'm deeply interested in how the neurotransmitters will impact metabolism, and that is, and then mood is downstream from there, and all of the research that we're doing in that aspect, because we've historically separated mental health from physical health, and they are so interrelated that they cannot be separated. And yet I think that's one of the reasons why we have this crisis in metabolic disorder in our country, but also a crisis in mental health as well. And yet therapists aren't talking about how the foods that you eat are impacting your mental health state. And they're not talking about supplements. And I don't blame them. It's a lot to try to absorb, but the trainers don't know anything about it either. And the nutritionists, I don't know if they're even able to talk about what that means to a client if they're struggling with anxiety or depression, which a lot of people are, and what foods they should be eating, what supplements they should be taking, what things they should be staying away from, and how they should be moving their bodies to improve the whole situation. So that's why I created bod, where I could help not only their mental health, but their physical health, and help people understand how everything fits together, bringing gut health into the equation now, talking about your gut brain axis and how to help everything work better together, optimized.
Okay, you said I let you go because I didn't want to interrupt you, but I raised a lot of questions. First of all, you talked about being certified as a personal trainer, but nothing about metabolic health was part of the curriculum.
Nope.
Has that changed?
It seems to have changed in more recent certification programs, yeah. But back in 1995, it was here's how muscles work, here's the anatomy, here's how we train, here's how we work with cardiovascular exercise, here's how we
Okay.
do our, musculoskeletal exercise. But nutrition wasn't even a big component of that. But mind you, back then, there were no nutrition labels either. You had to actually know how many calories were in a gram of carbohydrate. You had to know this stuff because it wasn't sitting there on the box.
I'll take your word for it.
I
Well,
know it goes
it seemed,
back a lot.
in my not entirely reliable memory, it seems like it was there already, but who knows? So one of the things that I've observed, I'm gonna give a little background on my question. One of the things I've
Mhm.
observed, particularly watching online, is bro science is generally 10 or 15 or 20 or 50 years ahead of science, simply
Yeah.
because these dudes are biohacking themselves in the gym. They've got a laboratory, which is their own bodies. And if they don't get results very quickly, they discard it and move on to the next thing.
This is true.
Was there not a, I'm struggling to imagine Arnold back in the 70s when he's pumping iron, not also being hyper focused on diet, but I wasn't
Oh,
there. I don't know. What
Oh,
was the
the
diet?
bodybuilding community is absolutely hyper focused on diet. It's one of the ways, it's one of the reasons why I fell in love with the biochemistry class, because I was like, I want to understand this at the cellular level because I know what the bodybuilding community does and I know what everybody else does. And I understand the sad diet and I understand what nutritionists are telling people to do. The nutritionist told my dad to eat his grains
Yeah,
with type 2 diabetes. I'm like, ah.
yeah, yeah. We hear
So
it a lot.
I'm sure you hear it a lot. Going back to answer your question, of course they did. And that was where I kind of started to dovetail the traditional science route that I was on and the bro science route, because I'm 20 years old. I had just gotten certified as a personal trainer in my bio undergrad, and I'm training for Miss Fitness. So I'm trying to get down to 12% body fat while being able to perform at the highest cardiovascular level at the same time. So yeah, we had bodybuilding definitely had a great understanding of nutrition. They knew what worked and what didn't work. They didn't have a lot of names for it or a lot of
Right.
labels, but there was a definite desire to eat plenty of protein, no carbs, nothing but green vegetables when you're getting ready for the stage, not tomatoes, not carrots. Those have too many carbohydrates, and it's very strict. But yeah, we understood it.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say, and I wish I had a retort to, but I begrudgingly have to agree with is, the bodybuilders and the bro scientists have been way ahead of the medical community on this. And, the unfortunate thing is, we've talked about it before on the show, not only did within the medical system, nutrition was marginalized, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever nutritional advice was being given was just flat out wrong. And so it was kind of a double whammy. I mean, basically, your
Yeah.
doctor mostly didn't talk about nutrition, and the little bit they did was just wrong. And you would have been much
Mhm.
better off, in your local gym,
Talking to
listening to
Guido in
the
the back, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Doesn't that
It's
kind of blow your mind that this musclehead who probably can't balance his own checkbook, I know I'm being silly here, but understands how the body works better than
there.
all our overeducated that I'm sorry, I don't mean to be I'm not feeling great today,
I
so I'm in a
used to,
little bit
I
of a
used to
grumpy
be of
mood.
that opinion too. I used to think of them as meatheads, and I used to think of myself as superior because I was going to school for it and I was
Mhm.
learning it the way they didn't understand it. But at the end of the day, I looked at the biochemistry and what they were doing, and I'm like, but they're right. They're in a lot of counts. They don't know why they're right. They can't point to the exact mechanism
Yeah.
why, but they have it. And so it's one of the reasons why I don't jump at a ton of supplements, right? Somebody goes, this is a great fat burner. I'm like, does it have enough L-carnitine in it? Nope. I wouldn't even pay attention to it. Now, what are we talking about? But it's got yohimbe bark. I don't care. It doesn't have the very building blocks that we need for fatty acid oxidation to accelerate. What are we talking about? And so there's a lot of the bodybuilders that didn't fall for that stuff either, but some of them did. And then being a personal trainer, we all looked at the bodybuilders as meatheads too. So
Right.
there's definitely the superiority type of attitude, but I couldn't help the fact that they were right about a lot of it.
Okay,
So,
now oh, I'm sorry, Phil.
yeah, I was going to say, I'd love to hear your thoughts on two of the common sort of, I guess, counter arguments against, we should be taking nutritional advice from bodybuilders, right? And the first one is, that 99% of us are not, looking to be bodybuilders, right? You have to get that kind of physiology. So is what they're doing really applicable to the common person who's just trying to avoid heart disease or avoid diabetes. And second, being that, bodybuilders oftentimes aren't very healthy, and we see them oftentimes, dying young, dying early. A lot of this stuff, gets into news when these bodybuilders pass away early.
Yeah.
And just,
I,
some of them are not metabolically healthy. They look great on the stage, but they're not
mhm.
metabolically healthy. So love to hear your thoughts on both of those.
I have a lot of thoughts on all of that. So I'm glad you
Yeah.
asked that question. That's why I kind of dismissed them for a long time. I'm like, they know how to help each other get onto a stage for a very short period of time. Like they understand how to get very lean for a very short period of time. But over the last few decades, what I've noticed is there are some very smart ones that have come out of it that have PhDs that do understand how to maintain the integrity of your metabolism, get lean, and then come out of it and not wreck everything in the process. You look at Arnold back then and you think they were way too big. They were all taking all of the steroids, not just some, but all of them.
Oh,
And that's one of the things that I really fell into studying when I was in my undergrad at the science library. I was like, what are all these steroids? What do they do? What are the side effects? What's it going to help with? What is it? Why should they do it? Why shouldn't they do it? What are the right doses for it? Because I was just curious, because I was trying to figure out what do they have going that's right and what are they missing the mark on. So for the let's address the one that die too young. Yeah, they're dehydrated. Some of them are not cardiovascularly healthy. Their hearts, I'm not sure if their hearts are enlarged from all of their steroid use, which in and of itself is a bad thing. This is why I've never been a fan of only walk for cardio. No, we need to maintain the integrity of the entire system, even if that means that we don't place, right? So the Olympians, the people that hit the highest levels, that gained the most weight, that really pushed their bodies to the absolute limits, I don't think that that's anything that any normal person wants to do. Even most bodybuilders don't want to actually go that far because they want to live a good long life too. The vast majority of them. So the ones that died young, they probably had a mental health issue, probably a lot of body dysmorphia, and I feel sorry for them that they pushed their bodies to those limits. But the basics, what they had right was the high protein, right? The different fats, because you manage your fats differently when you're trying to lean out and get on stage than you do when you're just going through normal everyday life. So we cut out all land animal fat as low as possible and take even oil supplements like flaxseed oil and things like that, because you need to have a certain amount of fatty acids to maintain good health. But they will absolutely cut out all dietary fat that they possibly can to get lean. That's not in and of itself necessarily a bad idea for somebody who's trying to lose weight too. The difference, though, is a lot of them are a lot more metabolically healthy. They are training a lot harder. They are burning through a lot more calories so they can sustain the kind of carbohydrate intake that a lot of people who are just trying to lose weight can't reasonably sustain, because they're just not going to burn enough calories to get through it. And they're not in the kind of condition that they would need to be in order to burn enough calories to justify 400 grams of carbohydrates a day.
good Lord.
Did that make sense the way I described it? Did I
There was
answer your question?
I wanted
Yeah.
to ask about
Okay, good.
that, and I realize we're talking about the top 1% of the top 1% who go to
Yeah, it's
these
crazy.
extraordinary extremes. But I'm my understanding, again, with my extensive background in music, just to give you an idea where I'm
I
coming from.
like you.
My understanding is that of all the fats, the animal fats are by far the best for human consumption. And lowering our fat consumption is detrimental to a lot of things.
We need
And
some.
Phil, help
Yeah.
me out here because you're the expert, but
Yeah.
I'm not saying I disagree because I'm not educated enough to disagree. But you did violate one of the things your statement violated one of the things that I believed to be true.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Alli was getting at is, in pursuit of this specific outcome, right, which is getting as lean as possible, cutting out fat has a role. We can't survive without, too low of, you need some minimum fat consumption for survival purposes. And they're just taking a different approach in getting that. I don't think any of them would necessarily say that's the best approach to long-term health. That's really, like Alli was saying, in pursuit of that short-term goal of how can I get as lean as possible for the stage.
And so we don't live on just tilapia and asparagus alone forever.
Oh God, what a horrid.
But there is a reason why we cut out that dietary fat as we're shredding up for the stage, because your body uses up the fat that's underneath your skin. So you show off the striations. And then of course we add it back in because we don't want to live like that the entire time. First of all, it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I don't think anybody really enjoys walking around, looking like that all the time. Lean, good. Extra lean, no. I don't even like my looking like that all the time.
So a female at 12% body fat, is that competitive for bodybuilding?
I think it's competitive for bikini. When it comes to bodybuilders, I think they get a lot leaner than that too.
What do men get down to?
They get down to 2 to 3%, like
Oh,
really,
God.
really shrink wrapped kind of lean.
So that all by itself just isn't healthy. That can't be healthy.
I mean,
You can't walk around at 3% body.
Your brain needs fatty acids just to make neurons. You
Yeah.
need fatty acids to make cell membranes. I mean, your body needs them. So this is why you don't do it for very long. And you certainly don't stay there for very long. But they do add in oils. They add in olive oil, even when we're shredding for the stage. We'll cut out the chicken thighs, but you're going to add in avocado. You're going to add in olive oil. You're going to have several tablespoons of this throughout the day. I don't know about the bodybuilders themselves, but for the bikini competitions that I get ready for, I'm never under 30 grams. But it's oil, it's high quality oil fats like olive oil and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So
I have no idea we go down the bodybuilding path, but
yeah,
you started it.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's bring it back because, the majority of people that you work with are not looking to be bodybuilders.
They are not. None of them.
How do you put this together for them?
How I put it together for them is I focus on a high protein diet first. And then I calculate the different types of fats, the animal fats, the oil fats. And we're not talking about industrial seed oils. We're just talking plant-based fats and their particular carbohydrate mix that they need, depending on their performance level and what their goal is. And so I calculate their macros that way. I give them their bespoke workouts every day. Here are the exercises I want you to do for your goals, the sets, the reps, the weights, the everything. And here's the cardio I want you to do. So I help them with the intervals and getting up to the 4x4 Norwegian, the Norwegian 4x4 for VO2 max, because most people cannot start there. But most of my clients are just typical people that sit behind a desk that are overweight and just want to get healthy again. Like my husband. My husband actually started off as a client in 2020. He was 370 pounds.
Oh my Lord. Tell me he's 7'9".
Right. No, he's 5'10". And
wow.
he had lost about 50 or 60 pounds on his own, but got stuck. And so he reached out to me and so of course I put together his workouts, his nutrition, all of that. And he dropped another 40 pounds, but there was a lot of mental stuff. The way I look at it is if somebody's gained more than, let's say 20 pounds since their ideal weight, maybe, or their healthiest, sometimes that's in high school, college, but call it right around in that age range. If they've gained more than 20 pounds, it wasn't on accident. It was something got in the way mentally. They either changed their priorities or they started to convince themselves that I'm just getting older. And so this is how it is. And so I'll just continue down this path. Especially when you gain that kind of weight, you're gaining 50 to 100 to 150 pounds more than you really should weigh at your ideal weight for your lean mass. There's some mental stuff going on. We're using food to cope. with some kind of pain. And food addiction is a really big problem for a lot of people. They don't even realize that food addiction is a thing. Most people don't anyway, but it is. And so it's very easy to use food to cope. Most families do it. And the more stuff that's going on in your family, the more often you're probably using that food during family gatherings to cope with whatever that dynamic is that's going on that's causing pain. And so a lot of my coaching really focuses on helping people unearth the root cause of what is causing them to overeat to begin with, at the same time that we heal their metabolism through the proper behavioral modifications.
So you're playing the role of therapist as well as trainer. The first question that comes to mind is, have you observed a gender-based difference I realize it's a self-selected group of people who come to you for training, but is it pretty evenly split between men and women? Are there more males than females, more females than males? And have you observed any gender-specific differences?
Gender specific differences, be it with regard to obesity.
Yeah.
Generally, what I see is a couple will have it together. Associations are very powerful. I don't often see one spouse being terribly obese and the other one being very fit. That's not usually the way things go. But I have not seen a gender specificity with regard to it. The women could be just as obese as the men. I have seen differences in how to approach it and how men's bodies and women's bodies can behave very differently with regard to that fat loss. But with regard to becoming obese and having those food issues, no, it seems pretty evenly split.
So what are the differences? What are in response?
Men, it's pretty easy to just cut out sugar, cut out a couple of things, increase their testosterone. Their bodies tend to respond pretty well to that.
Really?
Women, yeah, women in perimenopause, now they've got fluctuating estrogen levels and progesterone levels and testosterone levels and all the mood things that go with that. So it's not just their hormones, but it's also the way they feel about themselves. And men tend to be very one track mind. I don't know if you've noticed
Sure.
that.
Oh, yeah.
And as such, I can get them focused on the one thing. Do this, and they will just go do that one thing. But women tend to think on multiple tracks at once. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I have. I have.
You've been
It's
married,
one of the things that
apparently.
it's one of the things that makes your people so delightfully intriguing to us.
It's
Um,
also one of the things that makes it more difficult for women because we're ruled by our hormones a lot of the time. Our mood is, our mindset is, and our self image.
are there common fixes that you can use? Or is it more, as you said, I'm going to use the English word bespoke?
It really ends up depending on the person. I've got a lady that's 60. She just dropped down to 135 for the first time since she was in high school. Her hormones are fine, but it was a lot of anxiety that was crushing her metabolism. It was a lot of mindset around exercise, around food, and she had terrible IBS to the point where she couldn't trust her gut any morning that she woke up. So we fixed the digestive issue and started really working on the anxiety. Come to find out that had deep roots back to childhood.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey getting her to be able to empower herself and be able to speak up for herself. But as soon as she could start speaking up for herself and that anxiety started to diminish, her body started releasing body fat like nothing, like nobody's business,
Now, I'm
How,
not surprised by that, but that's still really cool.
isn't it?
Sorry, Phil.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I was just going to ask, sort of the chicken and the egg scenario there,
Yeah.
which do you find tends to come first? Is it is it the mental stuff that then leads to the, we'll call it aberrant eating behaviors, that can lead to things like obesity? Or, do you find the other way, right? People get overweight and they get depressed and, get the sort of guilt and shame issues around becoming overweight. How do you usually see that playing out, and how do you start to undo them, one versus the other?
I'm so glad you asked that question because it's actually why I wrote my book and my second one too. So in my first book, I talk about how the puzzle pieces of gut health, exercise, nutrition, and mindset all interconnect and all the ways in which they feed back to each other. But in the second one, I created this, it's kind of like a wheel of life. I don't even know what to call it yet. I don't have a cute marketing term for it, but really great image of it. And it's thoughts beget feelings, feelings beget your hormones, hormones beget your behavior, your behavior begets your reality, and then it feeds back into your thoughts again. So it almost always starts with some initial seed of thought that was painful, that you assigned meaning to, that created these feelings of anxiety and depression. So it changed your hormones, and you went and ate something that you was unhealthy to quash those feelings and try to self-regulate those hormones back again. And then that added body fat, and that became a self-fulfilling prophecy of, see, I am fat, see, I'm not worthy, see, I am. And it's just round and round we go. So in unwinding it, I'm of course attacking at the behavior part, because that's exercise and nutrition, and that's unfortunately where most of the fitness industry starts and stays. They don't really address hormones or anything else upstream from there. They figure if you're not disciplined enough, then you just don't want it bad enough, because you should just be able to eat less and move more, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I've heard
yeah.
it and I just want to punch them in the neck every time I hear that stuff. And so that's where they address it. But then medicine tries to address it with the GLPs at the hormone level. But you can still have all the anxiety. You can still have all of these other upstream issues that were causing that. See, the GLPs, I think, are a wonderful opportunity for us to really change our thought pattern, change the way we view food, change the relationship with it, and really unearth these deeply rooted, painful memories from the past that have caused us to self medicate with food and booze and drugs and everything else, because at least it'll calm the food noise enough so that we don't go running right back to the very thing that we're trying to control as we're trying to get out of this pattern. So I do all of it. I find whatever tool we need at the time. And if we need to inject GLPs, we'll do that. But we'll always address the behavior and then address the thoughts that are originating all of the behavior from that point forward.
Okay, I want to drill down a little deeper into the cycle that you described. Thought leads to
Feeling,
the
feelings,
emotion, and the emotion triggers the hormones.
hormones.
That's not the model I understand. Now,
Think, go ahead.
I will say I really like what you said. It
Okay.
it makes sense to me. But I live in this world where a lot of the things that we choose to do are because of the hormones that we've got coursing through our veins, and we don't have a lot of ways to control the hormones coursing through our veins other than sheer willpower. And even as I articulate this, I'm aware that there's big gaps in my explanation there, and maybe that's what you're filling. But could you kind of unpack that link between emotion and hormone? I understand thoughts create emotions. I understand hormones create drives, or maybe hormones are the drives. I don't know. But that link between the emotion and the hormone, I'm not clear on. And I may be going
Okay.
too far down the rabbit hole here, Phil. So reel me back in if I am.
Yeah, reel him back in if he is. Okay.
No, yeah, this will be great discussion, understanding the impact that emotions and thoughts can have on our hormones.
So we know from psychobiology the mechanism by which if you have intense anxious thoughts, it causes your mitochondria and your neurons to excrete cortisol. It also causes them to dump their own DNA. So that
Dump their own
cortisol
DNA. What does that mean?
kind of means like they're committing suicide.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So cortisol isn't only excreted by the adrenal glands, is what we now know. That's excreted from the mitochondria themselves. And so cortisol is one of
In
those.
every cell?
Oh, specifically in the neurons, we know that. Now, in every cell, that's a very good question.
Well,
I'd
okay,
have to go back to the research
it's
to be
not
able to
just
answer
the
that
adrenal
accurately.
glands. Okay.
We always thought that it was, but it turns out the mitochondria do it too. And so that has obviously
Oh my
downstream
God.
effects on our metabolism.
I'm
And it
thinking
affects the
what I'm responding
neurotransmitters
to
too.
here is I had a severe adrenal crisis that almost killed me a little over 20 years ago. And I know the emotional stress environment that I was involved in. And it's fascinating to think back to my experience of both getting very sick and getting well, metabolically, how unhealthy I was. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now.
I
And
believe it.
and I don't think I was eating. I don't think eating took me there. I think a completely dysfunctional metabolism took
it
me there.
it's
But
entirely possible for that
it was
too.
going on in my
Yeah.
thoughts as well. It wasn't
Right.
just
Right. So think about if the cortisol, if your body's bathed in cortisol all the time, you could be eating the same amount, but gaining weight simply because your metabolism has downregulated 100 calories a day.
yeah.
And now you're eating the same foods that you always ate, but you're piling on weight. And I honestly think this is one of the reasons why people just say after 40, as you get older, you gain weight. I also think that we're more anxious after 40 because we've also got these life events like kids growing up. And have you ever raised a teenager? My daughter's graduating from high school in a couple of
Horrible.
hours. And teenage girls, man, they will test you. Right. I love my daughter and she's amazing. And my goodness. So after 40, we've got all of these things going on. We've got aging parents. We've got teenagers that we're raising. We've got probably our height of financial stress with mortgages and cars and car insurance for our teenagers and all of these things going on. And at the same time, we've also got tanking testosterone. So, of course, that looks like the
Oh,
perfect storm
interesting. Yeah.
for weight gain, right? So, remember, okay, so you gained 50 pounds and you don't remember eating anything differently, but you probably didn't have to eat anything monumentally differently to gain that much more weight. And the reason why I said if you gain more than 20 pounds, there really is something deeper going on because at some point, if your pants get too tight, most people do not have these deep-seated issues, they stop eating. They push away from the plate and they go, no, I'm going to fast for the next few days because my pants got too tight. That's what they do to manage their weight. They start doing this little intermittent fasting with themselves. But those that blow right past, 4 or 5 pant sizes, they chose not to look. They buried their head in the sand for some reason. And the cycle continued.
Yeah, and we have, the I guess some people would call it the hard scientific evidence of this, right? There was that
Mhm.
famous study where they gave people, the milkshakes, and one was kind of labeled as a low fat, low calorie milkshake, and the other one was, labeled as a high fat, high calorie milkshake. In reality, they were the same milkshake, but they were able to actually measure different hormonal responses. Ghrelin in particular, which is one of our hunger
Mhm.
hormones, responded differently in the two groups that were eating the same milkshake because they believed it was different milkshakes. And there have been other experiments like that. So
Yeah.
it's always fascinating to, see studies like that explain exactly what you're talking about.
The mind is very powerful. Yeah.
You know,
Certainly.
Phil, as I'm thinking through the guests we've had on the show, we've had Georgia Ede and Chris Palmer who talk specifically about the mental health benefits of a metabolic diet. We've had tons of people who talk about just the general health benefits of getting metabolically healthy. I'm not sure we've had anybody who's talked about this interface between your thoughts, your emotions, and your metabolic health. And it's actually kind of cool, Alli, that we've got somebody who's a physical, who focuses on the physical inner work, but is able to start there at the mind level. And as you put it all together, it just seems so obvious, but like all those things that are only obvious in retrospect. Get your head straight, and a lot of the other stuff can kind of unwind from there.
I think it's because I'm not siloed into just the personal training space or the nutrition space or just the mental health space. Because I overlap in those areas, I see things from a whole different perspective than most of the
Yeah,
other experts.
that leads me to want to ask, if you were one of our typical focused on the body side, and that's, I realize even that's bad, but I would not, I would ask them something like, what's the common factor? And they'd inevitably talk about the common factor is diet. People are eating too much processed foods, too much carbs. And here's the quick and easy fix is, as Dr. Phil says, real food, whole food. So I'm going to ask you the same category question, but it's in the mental emotional category. What's the fastest, easiest? Is there a common way to get it to make a big difference fast? Is there common
Yes.
low-hanging fruit?
Yes. So therapy is a difficult way of going about changing your thoughts and changing the meaning to past experiences and things like that. But one of the things that I like to do, because EMDR is a very powerful form of
Yeah.
therapy that rewires the brain, but my criticism of it, and it's the only criticism that I have of it, is that she was moving when she discovered it. And we took it out of the field and put it into a clinical setting where now you're sitting and you're trying to recreate eye movement with fingers and things like that. So, what I like to do with my clients that are really working through some stuff is I say, okay, so take this thought, take this piece that you're wrestling with, go get on the bike or the step mill and start doing your cardio and then deal with it, because the hormonal storm that your body kicks off, c-reactive protein, cortisol, all of that, when you go into painful memories, it's almost like a mental quicksand. It's very difficult to pull yourself back out of it. But if you're forcing your body to release endorphins and dopamine while you're experiencing this and processing through it, you can pull yourself out of it that much faster. And I think that the blood flow and everything, all the component parts to that, is a much quicker way of getting through it. So that's one of the places, that's one of the tools that I like to use to move quicker.
Oh, that's fascinating. I did EMDR
I have too.
to fix a memory
Mhm.
problem. I
It's
guess
great stuff.
loved it. I recommend it to anybody who will listen. But I was, for me, it was the exact same thing, sit in a chair and I was listening to headphones and it was cool. I love it. But your description of kind of offsetting the anxiety inducing hormones and chemicals with the more the happy chemicals, the positive chemicals.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that's scientifically valid, but it certainly makes a lot of sense. I sure like the sounds of it.
I checked it out with a neurologist friend of mine about a decade ago when I first came up with this. Is I postulated the theory, could this actually work? And he went, actually, that's a great idea. Oh, that'll really work. And he's the one that told me all the hormones and basically gave me the explanation that I just gave you. And he said, and if you couple it with a high protein, low carb diet, man, you've got all the makings for really overcoming post traumatic stress issues so much faster.
It's been a while since I read The Body Keeps the Score. Was there anything about that in this? Do you know the book I'm talking about?
I'm aware of the book. I know the basics of the book. I haven't read it.
Okay.
I've read a lot of Louise Hay's work.
Oh, cool.
So
Big
now we
fan
start to
of Hay
understand the
House.
mechanisms
Yeah.
behind her work. But I was introduced to her my freshman year of college in '94. Imagine it
You
took
must
30
live in
years to get to this
California.
place.
You live in California.
Yes.
Probably in
Southern
Orange
California,
County. If I
Orange
was going to
County.
guess, I would
Yes.
go, yep, yep. Am I
How
good
did
or
you know?
okay?
It was a little too hippy dippy for everybody, for the rest of the country.
Oh my gosh.
I had a
Uh,
very hippie like roommate that was like, "Oh, we got to read this book." But I found it fascinating because, I mean, the mind is fascinating. And I saw it with my clients. I saw, oh, my knee hurts today. Did you do something? No, I just woke up and it hurt. You got a life decision that you're wrestling with. You feeling you're like you're digging in your heels and being resistant towards something. Yeah, how'd you know? Your body told me.
yeah, yeah. I want to make sure I don't leave this question unasked. You spoke very briefly about getting the gut-brain axis straightened
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
What little I know about that is that it doesn't get nearly enough attention.
No, it does not.
I would love to hear, and I basically just told you everything I know. So I would love to hear in the time we have remaining, just unpack that a little bit.
Okay, leaky gut is very pervasive for a vast majority of people. You can see it in skin, you can see it in brain fog, mood changes, under and over methylating certain micronutrients that can contribute to mood disorders like anxiety or autism or ADHD and things like that. And if your body isn't digesting nutrients well, or the LPS that are the little endotoxins that are stuck to the gram negative bacteria, and they can escape and go straight to your brain, this affects everything. So I think that there's a big component to all of those types of mood disorders, ADHD in particular, where people are like, I have ADHD, or autism and all of that. Like, you might have just leaky gut and you can fix that pretty easily with some very specific protocols with some companies that produce some really high quality products to do it. Did that answer your question?
Oh, we're getting there.
Sufficiently enough?
And I want to
What
I
else
want
would
to
you like
hear
to
a
know?
medical professional speak about it as well. Phil, am I just going way down a rabbit hole here?
No, I mean, I think it's a very underexplored area with all of this. And what's interesting, right, is we go back to Hippocrates, right? And food is medicine. And so it's something that's been recognized for thousands of years, but it's one of those things that gets ignored within our, kind of modern medical system. Just
Mhm.
the whole way we come about health, not recognizing how all these different diseases that occur all over the body, much of it emanates from, what's happening in our gut. And what I find, kind of interesting and fascinating about all of this, right? What most people don't think about is, the gut is actually maybe the biggest, it depends how you measure it, but it's one of the biggest ways that our bodies interact with the outside world. It's the contact point between our body and the outside world. And we just sort of forget about that because it's hidden inside of us.
Yeah.
It's just not obvious sometimes, but I think we're slowly understanding more and more about this.
Yeah.
And, it's one of the more consistent things that we find in people who make the changes, improve their metabolic health, and, these sort of mysterious digestive issues that have been happening get better.
Yeah, I've gotten many people off of proton pump inhibitors. My son, he came out of NICU with GERD. So what do? They put him on acids, right? They were like, he has too much stomach acid. So here, keep him on this medication. I said, when do we get him off? And they said, maybe he'll grow out of it. So I was introduced to a company and the CEO of the company back in 2016. Then, right around that same time, when my son was right about 2, he's almost 7. He'll be 7 in August. So, right about the time that he was 2, I was like, I need to get him off this medication, but I don't know how. And he said, oh, here, you give him this supplement every meal for the next 3 months and he'll be fine. And I did. And he was. And he hasn't had a dairy issue since then. He came out of NICU not able to tolerate dairy. I reconditioned his gut with their probiotics after I got him over his acid reflux. And he's been fine ever since. And I've done it with lots and lots of clients.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about your business. I want
Okay.
trying to make sure that we don't tax everybody. I suffer from insatiable curiosity, so I could ask you questions,
Me too.
but people won't put up with that. So it appears to me that there's an online element to your work, which would imply that you can provide services to people outside of Orange County.
All over the world. I don't do anything in person anymore.
Oh, okay. What is it you do other than just tell me things that I think are fascinating?
I started building back in 2009. I thought, how am I going to be able to reach more people faster? And I kind of concocted this idea of some software that would be able to deliver the personal training that I would give to somebody in the gym and give them that same kind of experience. And I wanted to include nutrition, have it be all in one place. And so that's what I've built. It's my bod software, and hence the shirt today. I added the coaching aspect to it at my husband's push. It wasn't gentle either. He was like, "You're really good at this. You need to do this." And because he had seen me coach him through a lot of painful memories and help him get over a lot of issues. And so we added the coaching aspect to it. And I do it on a one-on-one basis for people that don't want to have to go to a group. And I do it on a group basis for people that say, I've got just more fitness stuff I want to deal with, but I want some of that mental part too. And so I'll do the group thing. But then I have other clients that have some really deep issues that they really want to get past. And so we work one on one together because it could be a little too much for a group to handle and too much for them to divulge to a lot of people at once. Some memories are extremely painful, as you
Sure,
know.
sure.
And so that's the coaching that I do. It's all done via Zoom, just like this. But my workouts are delivered via my software. And then I go in and I check everything. And so is all of their food tracking, all my meals and recipes and everything, and the food tracking. And I set their macros there, and they can see how what they're eating stacks up against what they should be eating, and so on and so forth. And are they getting all the protein that they need? Are they getting the fats that they need? Are they limiting the amount of carbohydrates that they shouldn't be eating, and so on and so forth? So I do all of that through my software and through conversations like this. And then we communicate via the app, text, or Zoom, or whatever is the easiest form of
Well, I mean,
communication for them.
that's cool. I never picked up on that in following you on X.
Mm.
All right. So
Awesome.
what's
And
the
give
name of
the
the
yep,
how do folks find
give
it?
the plug. How do they get that?
Go to my website, bodbyalli.com, like this, Bod by Alli. You can they can schedule a call with me there where we can discover like what their real needs are, and if there's gut related issues or what some of the goals are. Maybe it's getting off of a medication that they don't want to be on, cholesterol medications, things like that, getting rid of their type 2 diabetes, which we do on a regular basis as well. And then we onboard them and we're off to the races that way. The
Um,
software is not just widely available yet because we're working out all the rest of the bugs. When I launch it, I will probably launch it in pieces so people can try it and give us some feedback. But I will definitely be letting people know on social media, okay, now you can enjoy this part of the software. And it'll probably be the training part first, and then we'll roll out the nutrition, but we'll keep the community aspect for people that not free. not,
your
not free
uh,
software.
your social media contacts available there on the website?
You know, they should be, but I'm
Yeah, they
Alli Covington.
should.
The way I just said that sounded so funny. I mean, I'm at Alli Covington on every social media platform. There's no
Okay.
underscores and no dashes and no ones and nothing weird. It's just Alli Covington, no E, no Y, ALLI, like my shirt, and I'm everywhere at that.
And what about the books? Are they still in print, still available?
It's coming out. I'm so glad
Ah,
you asked about that. It's coming out. It's called The Undiet because I'm really teaching you how to think about food and how to understand how food interacts inside of your body, and how training and gut health, they all interact and interconnect together. And then the second one, I don't have a title for it yet, even though it's mostly written, but it's going to have, the first one will have the puzzle pieces, and the second one is going to have that wheel, because we're really going to get into the nitty gritty on the thoughts, feelings, hormones, behavior, reality wheel.
I just have to say, I think that particular angle of approach, the only other people I've heard that angle of approach from have primarily been folks who are operating in the their focus is the mental health side. Having somebody who's obviously physically really fit approach it from that thoughts, emotions, hormones, behavior, blah, blah, blah. I think you're going to find a big market for that. That seems really cool to me.
Thank you for validating that idea. I really appreciate it because that one, when I wrote that out, I went, oh, I think I'm onto something here. I think I'm onto something
Yeah.
that can change some people's lives.
Sometimes it's not so much what the message is, who's delivering it. And you might be exactly the right person to deliver
Oh,
a
thank
particular
you.
message. Yeah,
That means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
certainly.
Awesome. Yeah, this was an amazing discussion. Keep up the great work. Look forward to following it along and seeing how it's growing. But love that, kind of, like I said, other perspective that you're bringing to this. And, it's just always interesting to me to see all of the different sort of backgrounds that bring people to sort of this same conclusion. And it really just does seem to be an innate thing that we have to get out of our own ways largely as a society and do what's obvious and stop making it so damn complicated is a lot of this.
Thank
Yep,
you. It's been such a
absolutely.
pleasure to watch your work grow and gain traction and understanding among people too. And I'm so glad that you're doing this podcast. More people need exactly what you're doing and what you're bringing to the table. And thank you so much for having me on.
We're glad to have you. She's Alli Covington. Her website is Body by Alli,
Bod.
ALLI. I'm sorry, Bod by Alli.
Bod by Alli.
I was looking that up. Bod by Alli. No, it's not an Italian pastry. And she's Alli Covington at all the social media places. So we'll provide links in the show notes, as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
For Dr. Philip Ovadia, this has been Stay Off My Operating Table. We're glad you were here. We'll talk to you all
Thank
next time.
you. Thank you.
Chances are you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't need to change your life and get healthier. So take action right now. Book a call with Dr. Ovadia's team. One small step in the right direction is all it takes to get started. Contact us at ifixhearts.com/talk. That's ifixhearts.com/talk.